I appreciate the opportunity to bring some of these thoughts to you. And I hope that our ancestors will be here with us today as we reflect on their teachings, what we have learned from them, how we are recodifying their wisdom into the needs of the world as it currently exists. And we'll be proud of the words that we'll be expressing those thoughts so that we may make better connections so that today we'll feel connected and that our children will be proud of what we are accomplishing. And with that, my job really was not to come up with a new system, but rather look at the environment that we are living through today and the challenges globally for food, for nutrition, especially because food and nutrition, you know, it's not the same thing. And then to come into this space by going after the ancestral, well-established process, which through evolutionary processes of the earth itself, optimize not only the species, but also the ecological blueprints across the planet so that photosynthesis, animal activity, and soil could be optimized. Photosynthesis, animals, and soil is where most of the energy on the planet is transformed. Animals is really where it happens the fastest and is the most effective. Now, when we come into a space and we mess with either one of those three, we deteriorate the soil health or the animal intervention in the scale at which it needs to be done, or we reduce the photosynthetic area of a landscape. All of those things, as we interfere, we actually diminish that geoevolutionary blueprint, which was perfected over billions of years, in which conditions for us to say that we can do better is not only arrogant, it's an insult to our ancestors who understood that we can't. And it is also very, very diminishing to us as human species to pretend that that is actually possible. What is possible though, is to remove the blockage of the other 95% of our indigenous intellect so that we may see the full potential of any ecological blueprint. And in this context, for me, it's about the chickens. For all of us, it's about the trees. For some of you, it may be about the chickens and the trees. And at the end of the day, it's about all three of these elements of the planet, right? Or these places where through the biophysics and the chemistry of the planet, governed by the laws of thermodynamics, energy goes from non-edible to edible forms, whatever you want to call it, eggs, forages, beef, sheep, whatever you want to call it. Those are simply expressions of the energy of the planet, us being one of them. And hopefully you will become food when you are done as well. Chicken is our entry point into the system, only because you got to enter the system through the functions of livestock. We pick chickens for hundreds of reasons, that primarily because in most small farms, new farms, immigrant farmers, land access is the biggest barrier by far of any. And so chickens allows us to break down a lot of those barriers and accomplish the same things that established farmers can. Now, back to the three areas of intervention. The chicken for us, again, is the entry point. That's the livestock of choice. The trees are central because chickens are jungle fowl. The soil and what the chicken and the trees do to the soil is critical to close those loops and to optimize the energy transformation capacity of the landscape. We don't think of an acre as 43,600 or something square feet. Rather, we think of it as a three-dimensional space where energy transformation is happening all the way from the deepest root to the top, to the canopy, to the tallest canopy, and everything in between. It's a three-dimensional image, right? And that allows us to see the other 95% of possibilities that we ignore and we block when we look at it linearly from an extractive production perspective, right? Still get the outputs. We'll get more if we see it three-dimensionally. And so the first harvest is fruits, nuts, meat, eggs, all of those things. Then the energy that we can't use right there on this space because the chickens sleep on barns, and that manure, which we can't eat right away, but other creatures will, gets transformed over and over. So we are now generating grain production, vegetable production, medicines, and literally a full plate with over 200 different vegetables that because of chickens actually have all 13 of the basic nutrients that almost every plant needs in order to get to a very high level of proficiency in its genetic expressions, right? So it's another reason we pick poultry. But some of that energy, again, turns back into the system. And as a circular energy cycling process, we calculated we are harvesting between 30 and 40% of all of the energy transform, which means we are leaving 70% in the bank of energy so that the system continuously, exponentially improves year after year after year. And we have seen that now through the data we are collecting. This is just a picture of what the space looks like. These are hazelnuts. The trees, back to Austin's point, you gotta pick the right trees. Any tree won't do it with chickens. And we can get into that in the consultation sessions if you want to. It will only cost you about $400 an hour. Not really. We can exchange it, as I said before, maybe we do it for an exchange of services. If you don't have trees, you can always create a canopy for the chickens. We use sunflowers and corn rotated while the trees develop. The key to this is that you get a livestock that delivers you income within 70 days. While they also fertilize and weed your tree plantings, at least where the chickens range. And then they give you the fertilizer for the rest of the farm where you may be growing trees as well. So you got this whole system integrated. There's never excess manure or nutrient overloading or anything like that because the tree density in the ranging areas is calculated so that it will absorb all of the nitrogen and other nutrients that the chickens are laying around. From there, from the production unit, which is simply an engineering unit with on the bottom, you can see this is Will Crombie's farm. You may hear about the organic compound. That's the first farm that we actually designed and deployed as part of a collective. That farm is mapped out for 4 production units on the south, and then the rest of it is alley cropped with the same species so that you can actually move that energy around the farm. A production unit is a barn, 2 paddocks, water, feed, and the rest of it is a couple of hours of work a day, and you can raise 3 flocks. The northern climate around here, you can raise up to 4 flocks, 1,500 chickens per flock, and the density of the trees then is calculated to give that jungle-like environment about 50 to 60% canopy cover. You use hazelnuts or elderberries, and then the upper canopy with perennials native to that space. The key is that now you have stacked everything above the chicken, below the chicken, and now you have a fully functioning interdimensional space. They look great. I really like our farms. The people come in to take pictures, students come in there to sit around. Contrary to what a lot of folks think, there is no manure accumulation in the fields. You can walk barefoot out there 3 days after we have rotated them. The amount of biological activity is so large that it actually processes all of that continuously. The hazelnuts inside where the chickens range, like you see here, have been now producing the hazelnuts outside of the chicken paddocks by 2 to 3 times. So you know that those hazelnuts are super happy, probably happier than the chickens, I would say. I have no proof of that, and no scientist that would tackle that question. 4 weeks inside the barn, and then they get to range. Now, don't ask me how we get them to do that on their own, because it's a long answer, but it takes training just to give you an idea. But they will do that under proper management. Management, again, being the key. That same flock, 70 days later, still doing the same thing. You can see the green stuff really close to the barn. That shows you that even close to the barn, they don't obliterate everything. Proper management again. If you don't do the stuff the way it is designed, you will have bare ground everywhere. The rotational system eliminates a lot of the labor. Open the door and they do the rest. And we're not talking about 100 chickens. This is 1,500 chickens per flock. It's a really nice sight to see them, get outside. You can see the hazelnuts fully grown in this case. Manure then gets processed, mixed with other organic matter to create the proper nitrogen carbon ratios and to fertilize the crops outside of the ranging areas for the chickens. We have grown almost every vegetable that I would ever want to eat. And we get optimal results. Even corn grows completely 100% with only this input. The layered mulching is critical. We brought some of our native corn and native beans and grown food sovereignty primarily, but also other folks are growing it, like the garlic. We're scaling it up for markets, so we are setting up processing for that. We streamlined the process of planting the trees so that we can plant. In this specific case, this is my farm. We planted 8,200 trees in 4 days, and we were done with it. And then we just made sure we took care of them. We had 80% survival, so we're on the opposite side. Then we brought scientists. Now we are tracking all of the different critical indicators of the ecological impact of the system. We're in the 3rd year. We got 2 more years. We have been blessed with incredible partners that not only know the science, but also investors who have put capital into ensuring that we track this. And the results have been really blowing us away. Not only is the nutrient density of our chicken now, as in the preliminary results, showing sometimes in the vitamin A, for example, we go from a rate of 15, 18, 20 in the competition, grams to ours at 250, for example. It's so exponentially larger in terms of a lot of the differences that, and we know because this is the health of the soil being expressed. And for example, that probe, penetrating the regular field, which was actually a very healthy field, only 56 inches, while ours went straight down 82. Give you the idea of the structure of that soil. The organic carbon at 60 centimeters, we still had carbon so the depth of that carbon in a space where there was no carbon whatsoever below a few inches when we started. And then the infiltration, 71, 13, and 6 inches in per hour in vertical versus 2 and 1. That's such an exponential difference, and we know water is life. And so this is critical indicators that there is an explosion of life, and because of that, there will be an optimization of the expression of the genetics of any species that we put in there. Until we do that, we don't know which trees are going to do better, because the space where they are placed is in the conditions of it is critical to how they do. So to that landscape painting, by the way, when I am asked, what do? I always say I'm an artist. And my canvas is the landscape. And our job is to ensure that it looks beautiful. And so to that landscape blueprint, we added a business blueprint of an ecosystem, right? And so Tree Range Farms is what I'm running now. It's 1 year old. We now have established ourselves in core markets. We developed just around over $1 million worth of markets this year. And we have 11 farms. We're moving into 25 farms this coming season with capacity for about 70 to 100,000 broilers. And we also bought a processing facility in Stacyville, Iowa a few years ago, launched the nonprofit arm of the system in 2018. And just recently, we launched Ecosystem Transformative Capital, which is the financing arm for the equity, which means we can buy equity into our own company and put that in the name of farmers and workers and so on. It's an ecosystem, a business ecosystem, to give you an idea, not a business. We are, as a Tree Range Farms, will eventually be owned by everybody who participates in the ecosystem. And then this blueprint, we can now transfer it to new regions because we did standardize the process. This is codified to be replicable. Maybe not the same species if a region has different blueprints, ecological blueprints, but the same blueprint for how they get deployed, right? So come to the Poultry Convergence is coming up in 21st and 23rd of March in Northfield, Minnesota. Through this convergence, we're now building the blueprint for the governing infrastructure for the whole system. Meaning every affinity group in the ecosystem gets a seat in the council that then defines the system. Somebody asked me to clarify on LinkedIn, what does farmer standards look like? Well, this is what it looks like. If they're listening, that's their answer. I'm not going to answer directly because I don't have time for that. This is the QR code if you want to come out in March. This is the third time we are gathering as a region of the poultry sector. And our hope is that as we form the council for the region, is the bordering region between Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin, that other regions will start doing the same. And eventually we can launch the Region of the Poultry Council of America by bringing representatives from all the different regions. And at that point, we literally collectively take over the poultry sector and create a blueprint for how you take over all of the other sectors and turn them into what we want rather than what we're being imposed upon. Thank you.